Hey everybody, ReefGrrl here, and welcome to Reef Wrap-Up number 18. What I'm showing you now goes back to the beginning of July. Yeah, it's been a while since I've brought you an update. Here are the Euphyllia that I bought at Big Al's in Kitchener to create a Euphyllia garden. If you've watched my videos since then in a couple of updates and short stream reminder videos, you might have seen the finished product. Here's what they looked like when I got them. And now let's take a look at a coral that I've had for approximately 5 years. This is Jason Fox Freak Hair Pavona. They call it a Pavona, but I'm not convinced. Here's what it looks like in lots of flow and low light. I love this thing. Those tentacles are actually neon green to the eye, and the skin is a deep magenta color. It's starting to grow out around the edges, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what it looks like as it gets bigger, and what the heck those white little eyes or mouths or whatever turn into. And in other news, I noticed my gorgonian polyps weren't out, and here's why. It's a hermit crab just crawling along the stem. Well, you probably know by now that I'm somewhat of a procrastinator. I finally decided it was time to take some actual PAR readings, so I hooked up my PAR sensor to my laptop, and my husband drew this map, kind of a rough layout of the rocks in the tank. And this is what I would use to record the actual numbers. You always think you'll remember, and then you never do. So I'm not going to make you watch in excruciating detail as we go through and record every single spot we decided to do, but what I will say is that the highest PAR reading I got was somewhere between 225 and 250, and it was, as expected, at the top of the rocks at the back, closest to the back light fixture. These light fixtures have been run on 2 modified programs that are provided as quick presets in the Orphec app. One is slow acclimation, that's the light at the front, and the other is coral color, and that's the light at the back. I did change some of the channel settings in kind of a search for what would look good when I'm doing video. Still haven't found that though. But what I did find out is that I have lots of space to turn the lights higher, because the PAR readings weren't as high as I was worried they would be at the outset, and that means if I go really slowly, I should be able to acclimate pretty much anything in here to a lot higher light than what it's getting initially. I'm not using even a fraction of what's available to me. So it's taken me since the beginning of July to turn up all channels of both lights around 5 to 6%. And I plan on going just that slowly going forward until I think I'm done. So here are all the numbers on my PAR map, and it was an exercise well worth doing. Of course, it always is well worth doing once I convince myself to just get it done. Last March, I got a captive bred coral beauty angelfish from my daughter and husband for my birthday. After spending the intervening months in the observation tank, putting on weight and growing a little bit, we finally put it into the tank here around the beginning of July. I'm happy to say that now, almost 2 months later, it is thriving. This is video of what the fish was doing shortly after it went into the tank. It didn't take long, and it was out swimming around with the other fish, and in fact, the blenny is now kind of a buddy, it seems. So I'm very happy that the fish is doing so well, and now I just have to cross my fingers and hope the little fella doesn't become a coral nipper as it matures. See right away, this looks different. We took the original rockscape out of here and moved it into the 150 and basically swapped it with this piece of rock. I wanted a really good look at what is on here. What I mainly want to get off of here is the blue-eyed blonde zoanthids and these guys, and I cannot remember what those are called, but they're a really pretty bluish green. So I finally fragged them and ended up with a double header of blue-eyed blondes. You can't see the other one, it's faced the other way, but this one is open nicely, and a triple polyp of the really pretty greenish blue ones. Back in the display tank, exciting news with the Blastomussa. Look at this, babies. So happy to see this because this coral is finally starting to come back from a long period of decline while it was in the holding tank. Since I put it in here, it is really improving. And here we are about 6 weeks later, and look at the size of the babies. They've become huge. I ended up moving both Blastos into the front left corner of the tank, and by the looks of it, I finally found the sweet spot. Speaking of sweet spot, check out the bird's nest. It is so floofy, it is unbelievable. This was back also in mid-July, and since then it has gotten even bigger. It looks awesome. And maybe someone out there can help me with an ID for this coral. It was sold to me as a green Cyphastrea, but the more I look at it, the more I doubt that it is a Cyphastrea. Does anyone have any ideas? Back in January, I finally found in Canada a frag of branching green star polyps. And here's what it looked like back then. Here's what it looked like in mid-July. The thing obviously has grown like crazy. I can hardly wait till it looks like a tree. I love my maze brains, and I have a whole garden of them in the front right corner of the tank. When I was placing them though, I didn't expect this. Although I knew they all had tentacles of some type or other, I had no idea how long they could get. And I never expected to have to move them apart so soon just so they would stop stinging each other. Here's a good example of it. This is during the daytime. At night, it is far worse. Now they're spread far enough apart that they can't touch each other even when these things are fully out. I also keep a very close eye on what used to be Lucy the bubble coral. Lucy Jr. is really coming back. Most days these bubbles are massive. When I first put this coral here, I thought it would be temporary, but it looks like it likes it here. Speaking of tentacles, Space Invader Pectinia, looking for trouble in the broad daylight. And here we have the buffet for snails, crabs, and urchins. I was shocked in the winter to discover how low the par was down in the holding tanks in the basement sump, so I turned the light up and this thing started to grow. Here it is in May when I brought it up to the display tank. I put it here temporarily, leaning up against the barnacles, but the fish moved right in and made it into a home. This is when those little weird spines and towers started to grow along the outer edges. And here it is in June, about a month later. Those things are still growing, and in August they're still growing. I don't know when it's going to stop, but I'm loving it. And let's have a brief interlude to appreciate the sunlight coming into the tank in the late afternoon. One evening, kind of late, I was right in the middle of installing some corals into this tank, and I suddenly noticed something interesting, so I dropped everything, grabbed the camera, and I caught this male angelfish displaying spawning behavior. I saw this in my Red Sea tank when I had the other pair of male and female spot breast angels. So they're starting to mature. It's going to be interesting watching them over the next several months. And now for a little bit of maintenance. If you saw my lighting video, you might remember that these are the shrouds that I used to cover up all of the wiring in the canopy. There are 2 fans that are aimed at the shrouds to keep the heat from building up along the sides, because there are LED drivers up here that get really hot. And because the fans are aimed directly at them and there's dust and there's salt creep, the shrouds get very dirty. So periodically they have to be taken down and cleaned. We just use a vacuum cleaner to do that. It's the simplest way. At some point though, I will wash them. I just have to find a way to deal with all of the Velcro. Once they're all vacuumed off and wiped down, we put them back up, and here's the finished product. I think they have a dead snail. At least I'm hoping it's a dead snail and not another crab that they're trying to rip out of that shell. There's 5 of them here. I've tried to push them apart a couple times and they just keep going right back at it. So they're the cleanup crew, and if they manage to get themselves a dead snail, who am I to interfere? Yeah. This is why I've picked out a bunch of rocks, and a few of the maize brains are going to be raised up off the sand and put on rocks. This one hasn't been so bad lately, but it often has sand on it as well. I think the clownfish might be trying to clean along here to lay eggs, I don't know. So here's what I ended up doing. And it's been a while that they've been in here, and it's working. I haven't seen sand on these guys in a very long time. It's the second one, and here's the third one. I mentioned earlier about war. I have had to separate these 2 because this one had 3 or 4 inch tentacles out, stinging this one after hours. So they're raised up now, and there has not been the problem with the sand that I was having before. Still working away, no eggs yet. All right, so the UV sterilizer has been taken apart and cleaned after we took it down, and I wanted to show you the bulb. Because the bulb has salt creep on it. The bulb was inside the quartz sleeve. That means the quartz sleeve was actually leaking. So it's a good thing we took it off when we did. You can also see there's some corrosion there. So in all likelihood, there's some kind of a minute crack in the quartz sleeve, or maybe one of the gaskets wasn't completely sealed. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's what the bulb looks like after roughly 8 months of use, and pretty soon we're going to be installing the big mama up there, that guy. But first I have to finish emptying this. We're getting there. Tonight I moved some bags of media out of the back over to this vessel. You can see them right there. First 2 were covered in chaeto and bubble algae. The third kicked up a nasty brown cloud in here. So I'm only going to move 3 per day, and less than that if, for example, the first one I move kicks up nasty, because the last thing I want to do is release any of that stuff into the system in quantities that it can't handle. So luckily the skimmer is downstream from there, and it should take care of most of it. What the heck is that? Look at that. Yeah, look at the salt creep. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to get a cloth and get that off real carefully if I can. Yeah. Ah, yes, another lovely dose of the fish enjoying afternoon sun on the reef tank. Division 500 skimmer, still chugging away. Yeah, I get about an inch a week of really dry skim and crunchy foam all the time. Exactly what I want. Making Montipora hirsuta frags. Yeah, what a pain in the ass. I finally decided to give in and use the Instaset because it was just, oh my god, couldn't get anything to stick. And here's a bunch of frags that I made. I think I might end up with about 25 altogether once I'm done. Yeah, I'll be glad when this is over. Oh man, I hate throwing this stuff away. It's just, oh, it's so healthy, but it's getting crazy up here, and that's only about 25% of what I have right now. I'm not going to the LFS for at least another week, probably, and I don't really have anywhere I can keep it wet and in light until I go. Unfortunately, it has to go in the trash. I'll leave you with a couple of pictures of Montipora digitata that are finally starting to grow, and I moved my cinerinas to where I can see them. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, why not give it a thumbs up? And oh yeah, how can I forget? This weekend is the global live stream. That means it'll be held on Sunday, August the 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. I hope you can join me. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, everybody.